Oh, hi there. My name's Elizabeth Bigley, better known as Cassie Chadwick, but we'll get into that story later. I thought, who better to tell you a story about my past than myself? I was born in 1857 to a farm family. Very simple, very modest, but during this time, my imagination flourished. In grade school, I had this teacher named Cassie Crushings, who confided in me and told me all her stories about men and wealthy relatives. As soon as Cassie's stories became boring, though, I started to make up my own stories. I had to embark on my own adventure. At this time, I found a lonely old widow by the name of Tom Wolseley, who actually bought my virginity for $50. He was just bewitched by my charm, but trust me, this was just the beginning. With the $50 from Tom, I learned all about the banking systems, possibly by trial and error, but I cashed the $50, they gave me a checkbook, and I started writing checks, buying lovely things. At 13, I was unaware that this could end up with me getting arrested. Spent one night in jail, but that was just They had told me I was never supposed to return to Eastview, Ontario again, my birthplace, but they had nothing to keep track of that noise. This little incident propelled me to complete multiple check frauds that came on later. Rich men loved me, and they loved the damsel in distress story. I don't blame. I used their money to keep my appearance lavish. A bout of check forgery got me arrested again, but that was minor, and they let me off on the grounds of it. I had moved to London, Ontario at this point in time. A poor prostitute by the name of Edna pitied me, of all people, pitied me. She took me in and I worked with her and we made a substantial amount of money. But I left Edna when I found out my little sister was getting married in Cleveland. I lived with my sister in Cleveland until she found out I was defrauding her husband's company, trying to borrow money from it. Left my sister, she kicked me out. Still in Cleveland though, I set up shop as a clairvoyant. And at this point in time, I went by the name of Lydia DeVries, one of my many name changes. It was really very simple for people to listen to me. I was so convincing. I had a client by the name of Dr. Wallace Springsteen, who I later married. As soon as my sister found out about our marriage, via being published in the paper, she approached Dr. Springsteen and told him about how I stole money from their poor company. He divorced me on the 11th day, but I got back at him later. I then moved to Erie, Pennsylvania and went by the name of Mazzie Brown. While in Erie, I took advantage of motel owners. I had one couple take me in, pay for my plane tickets. They thought I was deathly ill with some disease I made up by poking holes in my gums. The next set of motels I went to, I was in Buffalo. And while in Buffalo, I was in contact with a lawyer who got me $6,000 out of my marriage to Dr. Springsteen. All the money you can make in 11 days. During my time in these motels, I really never did pay for a single night. No, they never asked for it. I then moved back to Cleveland as a clairvoyant again, going by the name of Marie LaRose. During this time, I had married a farmer by the name of John R. Scott. He fell for my charms and good looks, but I soon became disinterested. I sought out John's friend, Richard Brown. He convinced me that John wasn't good for me and I needed to leave him. While he went out and bought me a ticket, I met with a lawyer. Little did Richard know, while at the lawyer, I left a little note talking about an affair, just to ensure the divorce went just the way I wanted it to go. I ended the marriage, and I got all of his possessions out of that as well. Shortly after this, I had a son named Emil. I took him to my parents in Eastview, Ontario. It wasn't until after my death that people actually associated him with me. I picked up the identity again of Lydia DeVries, playing the typical damsel in distress role, but this time I met a poor farmer by the name of Joseph Lamb. I dug him into deep, deep amounts of debt. He signed for loans, his friend co-signed for loans for me. but I always looked fabulous, so it didn't really matter. One day, though, I had given Joe some checks to deposit. Unfortunately, the accounts weren't real, and we were arrested with forgery for $40,000. At this point in my career, a little intermission, I was sentenced to 9 years for that note forgery. But fortunately, Joe was released on bail and I only served 3 to 4.5 years of that time. Promptly out of getting out of jail, I went back to Canada, lived with my mother for a short period of time, but had to get out of there. So I said I was going to live with my sister in Cleveland again, but that really wasn't true. I was just going to Cleveland and taking up the name of Cassie Hoover. I then married a Dr. Leroy Chadwick. We lived modestly until later on in our marriage, when the spending started. Buy lavish furnishings, seal coats. Who doesn't love a good seal fur coat? This spending, though, started my largest fraud yet. Prior to my marriage with Mr. Chadwick, I had claimed I was the unknown daughter of the steel mogul Andrew Carnegie. To avoid embarrassment, no one ever questioned me nor him about this hidden child. But let me continue with the story and tell you about this amazing fraud. I was pretty much genius. Pretty much. I had provided banker Ira Reynolds with a security package in the amount of $5 million, but using my charming and good looks, he never actually checked the security package and signed off on the value. This security package was to be realized January 1st, 1907. As a kickback, I was to pay Ira $350,000 in accrued interest for holding the security. This is where I began borrowing large amounts of money from various banks across the country, including from a Boston banker by the name of Herbert Newton. Newton was slightly suspicious of my borrowings at first, but backed by a note signed by Andrew Carnegie for $500,000. His lawyers suggested he give me the money. As time passed, Newton lost confidence in me. He made a trip to Cleveland to collect the final total amounts owing. When I was unable to pay Newton, the bank went out of business the following Monday. I was then arrested and charged with embezzlement. Soon after, they realized my $5 million security package was totally worthless. As my trial had progressed, they had questioned my identity as Lydia DeVere and found out that I was both Cassie Chadwick and Lydia DeVere. My dirty sister also told the courts that in no relation was our family to Andrew Carnegie. I was sentenced for conspiracy to defraud the Citizens National Bank and sentenced to 10 years in penitentiary. But my story ends here. I had passed away in jail October 10th, 1907.